Hey, I was drawn to the gathering back 9 years ago. Jeff invited me to a new locker room group. And I really had no experience with the gathering at all because I was new to the community. And when I went to the first one, I kind of locked in because I got to meet with men that I didn't pastor. And it was so nice just to be one of the guys and to start asking the tough questions with each other and learning each other, learning to trust each other. And it really locked me in. I'm still in that same locker room 9 years later.
That's awesome. Yeah. How about you, Josh? When did you get started?
Yeah, it's probably 9 years, 10 years ago, and it just started with a friend in Panera seeing me buy some bagels, and he's like, hey, I am a part of this group, and it is changing my life. And that guy, I knew a little bit about him, and I was like, wow, if it's changing your life, then that's something I want to be a part of. And, you know, I think especially in seasons of life, having outlets of guys that you can just be open with and just clearly be you. So being Josh in front of guys and not having to wear any other hats, that first few years was really big to just make me feel loved and have the community I needed. More than I thought I needed at that time.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
So this is my second locker room. The first locker room was right at the beginning when the gathering was getting started. A friend had just won office as an elected official in our community, and there was a desire to kind of get a group of strong guys around him as he was stepping into that role. And so for about 2 or 3 years, we met together just kind of to give him a safe place to be able to have guys that he could lean on.
Good.
And life changed for a lot of different people, and his job changed, and so that locker room kind of ran its course. And I think it was maybe a year or so kind of in between, and then Jeff invited me to step in for Bill Brown, you know, president of Cedarville University, who's, you know, moving out of town. Hey, would you take over his locker room? Which was intimidating because you've got these guys that have been doing it so well, so long with Bill, but it's been great. I've been in that locker room ever since. I think that's probably closing in on 10 years or so.
So you guys had to top me, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
10 years.
Well, I mean, it was just like, you know, and you stepped into a group of guys that had been doing this together for a long time. They had some pretty high expectations as far as a leader. I remember feeling pretty intimidated going into it, but just also feeling really accepted that I didn't have to be anything that I wasn't, which was really great.
Yeah, very
You know, I think one of the cool things about being around the gathering guys, we all can come in with our resume about showing where we've been, who we are, but it doesn't matter. It's where we're going.
Yeah.
And nobody looks back about what we've done in the past. It's where we're all going and how it challenges guys. And, you know, I think just for me in the ministry I am in, it started because of the gathering. You know, faithful guys praying, pushing me to places that I maybe wasn't even comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the cool things about it. Even, you know, in leadership positions, it's pushing and pulling you in different ways that it's giving God the glory and it's keeping you in His presence.
Yeah. I think that's the hidden gem that guys don't understand. Like I see friends of mine that are in the professional space, and all of their groups are all networking. They're all like, you know, in their lane kind of groups. Like the networks, who can I do business with? Who can I? There's something about the gathering, like you said, that it's everybody from all walks of life. It doesn't matter what space you're in or what your background is. And we're coming together to really call out the best in one another. Yeah. But yet all those other things that you're looking for also happen, right? Like the mission of connecting men to men and men to God. Yes. You still have that. Like we've got guys in our locker room that have collaborated on work projects together, or you're in the trades. I need somebody that does that. Can you help me out? And, you know, one of our guys is an accountant. I think he probably does most of our taxes now. So I mean, there are those connections of networking, but it's always to something bigger, right? Yeah. It's always to call out that inner man and what God is doing in you. Yes. So it's both. Both those things happen. I think that's awesome.
I was with an accountability group this morning, and my one question was to them, how could you best describe accountability with men? And one man said, it's making the commitment to answer the tough questions. Yeah. And I think of something we did about 4 years ago in our locker room group. They were asking, we usually do book studies, and they are asking, okay, what book, what topic should we handle next? And I said, how about the elephant in the room? And they said, what do you mean? I said, how about sexual intimacy? And they all kind of stared at me and said, we couldn't do that here because we usually meet in a restaurant. We started meeting at Maiden Lane Church in a private room. And for 10, 12 weeks, we dissected the Purity Principle book.
Oh, wow.
And something shifted with the group because we came to be really raw and real and honest with each other about this topic of sexual intimacy. And we stepped it up to a different level in accountability after that. And I'm so grateful for men that are willing to take those next steps to answer the tough questions.
And the thing is, like, we don't realize we need that until we've experienced it, and then we're like, well, why would I not want to live
Right.
in a connection with somebody else who I can trust with some of those vulnerable details, and watch them hold my heart and encourage me and call the best out. That's awesome.
You know, I think you don't have freedom from sin unless you're willing to talk about it.
Yes.
And I think that's, you know, where we get in these locker room groups and retreats. You get the freedom to talk because you realize you're not on an island by yourself.
Right.
And when you can start to be real with guys, all of a sudden those chains, you just feel them breaking off even more. And the gospel gets to come in. And, you know, I just think of, you know, we were doing with a bunch of younger guys, and we were at Scott Griffith's house for a retreat.
I've never been invited, by the way.
Oh,
No.
You have to be a younger guy.
you have to be a younger guy. And I just remember seeing guys just open up in ways they didn't expect to open up.
Right.
And when you have that, all of a sudden you actually give like a highway for the gospel to come in. And to see their hearts just molding and breaking down how the Lord wants that, you know, that visual of like a pot being made out of clay, you know, like that is the sweet stuff. And I think too often we want to put up the walls and the barriers, and it just seems like every time you get honest and real in a group, those things go down, and then you can have fun with each other. You can laugh and joke, but you always know you can also be serious. And you know, you can call somebody and know they're going to pick up, and they're not going to ask questions. Why are you calling me right now? It's, hey, you're calling me. What's wrong? Like, how can I love you now where you're at?
Right.
And to me, we don't have enough of that.
You know, I've loved how the Gathering provides this space for spiritual growth that maybe answers some of the challenges or the difficulties that people might have engaging in the church, you know, right out of the gate.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine that's involved in the locker room that had been in church for a really long time and had gone through some difficult circumstances at the church that he had been at. And for 7 years or more, I mean, he never lost his faith, but he'd gotten bit so bad by the church that he was just like, I don't see myself ever walking back into that space. But after a while, he was willing to start coming to a locker room. And it was the locker room being authentic community, being what the church could actually look like, that made it possible for him to find his way back to a different church, but back to church. He would have never thought about that beforehand, right? But this became a place where, like, so we can love each other. We don't have to, you know, be backbiting and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we had a guy that was like brand new to faith, right? And he had so many questions. And we were in the middle of doing a study of one of the books of the Bible. And he asked one of the most authentic questions ever, which was, who's Paul? Like, because and we just said, you know what, let's stop and let's just build into what those gaps
Isn't that
are.
awesome?
And his growth spiritually has been up and to the right ever since. There's just been an awakening of that. I'm not sure he would have gotten that direct kind of connection being a face in 200 faces in a crowd.
I've got a question for you. You pastor a very convenient, very unique congregation, the campus of Wittenberg, which is massive. I can see your need to connect with the Gathering because you don't really have that with the people you're ministering with.
Yeah.
But you and I, we have something similar. We minister to a few hundred people throughout the week, and every Sunday we're rock star pastors, you know. And
You are.
Yeah, right. And
You both are.
But why the Gathering? You're like me. You have accountability with many groups throughout the week, but why the Gathering?
Well, I think that every pastor will recognize being in a place where, like you said, you always have to be on at church on Sunday. And there's this tension sometimes of how much of the real me can I show? I mean, there's a vulnerability. You have to lead from a place of vulnerability. But there's also a place where, you know, if I share too much, do people lose confidence in being able to follow, right? That dynamic is out when you're in the locker room, right? And in the locker room, my title stays at the office. And in that space, I'm just Jeremy. I'm just a dad and a husband and a friend. And I've had guys in that locker room challenge me about loving Julie well, challenging me about the connection I have with my kids. I can come in frustrated because I've got 4 teenagers and, you know, they're not listening or we're at odds. And I've had guys that are like, I know your kid. That's a good kid. You need to circle back around, right? They can challenge me just as a person. The title's never in front of my name. And that for me is what I've experienced.
That's good.
How about for you?
Very much the same, although, you know, my life is pretty much an open book. I am who I am, but I do get what you said about being that perfect pastor on Sunday.
Well, I didn't say perfect.
Well, I know.
My wife will set that record
It's something
straight.
you can aspire to, but I think of the gathering, I'm just one of the guys.
Yeah.
And I've shared some hard things about my life. I had my oldest son was practically homeless for a while.
Yeah.
And bad choices he had made, and I just leveled with the accountability guy, the locker room guys, and let them know, and they committed to prayer, and they committed to checking on me beyond the group, and it made me feel valued. I wasn't a pastor that checked on everyone else. Someone was checking on me.
And there's a time where we don't want 600-800 people knowing what's going on in our house. But we need 8 guys. We need 10 guys that will rally around, that will text us and say, hey, how's your day going today?
Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah. And I love when one of my brothers from my group calls me, sometimes at bedtime. I'm not their pastor, I'm just a friend.
Exactly.
And I get to level with them and ask them tough questions and help process them through. And I love it when they will take a phone call every once in a while from me as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I think for me, because I am in a different space than you guys.
Yeah.
Like for me, I need older guys my age, that are just wanting to know how I'm doing. And it is so encouraging to me not to have to give a ministry update. And not have to be like, by the way, this is going on, boom, 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 boom. They're like, hey, that's great, but how are you actually doing, Josh? Like, how is your walk with Christ going this week? And for me, it's that I need to be able to put the guard down and not have to always put my, hey, look at all the awesome things God is doing at Wittenberg. It's like, you know what? This has been a rough week. I feel like I'm being attacked and I'm run down. Can y'all just like encourage me today? And it's those hugs and things like that. And I just think of even last week, we got to go to that event center and just a 45-minute drive there and a 45-minute drive back. Like my soul needed having that time of 3 guys in a car who had no agenda, had nothing but just like, you know, Marty just pouring into me, wanting to love on me and giving me ideas and how the Lord has worked in his life and not showing me, look how awesome the Lord is. Like I've always been ahead of the curve. It's like, man, I had to learn some things. For me, I can't put a dollar amount what that means to me. Like that is a gift from the Lord that I got and I get on a regular basis with gathering people.
See, what I love about you don't have a campus like Jeremy and I. You have a campus, an actual university campus, and you don't report how many were in attendance. You don't, all of those things. What you give me is the challenge to take the next step, to do something that's beyond the norm in ministry. The way you are so in the raw with your parishioners. Where you have to take risks and take steps and heavy conversations that lead to them to the next step in their life and their spiritual walk and accepting Christ. And that challenges me to want to do the same.
Well, the gathering gives that a great platform for those conversations to happen, because you and I, we can be in the same room in other contexts as pastors, but it's when we're in that room with the gathering where our title has come off, yet we're still in it.
Yeah.
that it really opens up a whole nother level of encouragement, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not at a conference sharing ministry hacks.
Yeah.
Right.
We're just like, Marty, what is God calling you to do next?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how's he putting gas in the tank so that you're ready to go again? So
You really want to know?
no,
Okay.
I don't.